Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Sylvia and I make videos on planning with occasional review. Today's video is day 13. Day 13, and we are continuing with our challenge of 1 month in Mabujo challenge, and our focus today is going to be on collections versus action lists. So some of you, especially those that are new to bullet journaling or the planner community here on YouTube, might be asking yourself, what is the difference between collections and action lists? Where do these terms come from? Which one should I be using? And how come a lot of people in the planner community tend to use these words, these terms, and kind of as if they are interchangeable? And the truth is, because they sort of are. So let's go to the literature, and by that I mean the books that these people actually have written on the subject. So the creator of the bullet journal system is Ryder Carroll, and years and years and years after he actually created the system, he wrote the book, The Bullet Journal Method. I don't really recommend it, and I've talked about that before, because I think that everything that you need is in like literally, I don't know, probably this many pages. It's the amount of information that you can find in the actual official bullet journal notebook. So if you buy this, in the back here, it has the introduction to the bullet journal system. And I think this is all of the notes that you actually need in order to use the system, to work the system, to get the core information that's necessary. So talking about the term collections, we can go to Ryder Carroll, since that's where it comes from. So back in the day, when I first found out about the planner community, I stumbled upon it, I think via Carrie Harling, and I talked about stumbling upon, I'm adjusting my ice pack because my back is a little angry at me this morning, stumbling upon the bullet journal method, more about like the beautiful spreads and what have you in collections, when I found Boho Berry. Enough to scare anyone off. Just kidding. So I really thought that a collection was basically just a list, right? I thought, okay, if I wanted to write a list of my top 10 favorite songs in the 70s, that to me is a collection, and in my mind still today, having read both of these books, it still is considered a collection. But in the bullet journal method, this was like the first time really I had seen Ryder Carroll or anyone dive into what it actually meant. So back here we have page 237, custom collections. They talk a little bit. So in Ryder's own words, the bullet journal's 4 core collections, index, future log, monthly log, and daily log, will serve you well in most cases. That said, bullet journal embraces the fact that one size does not fit all. What if you need to keep track of something in a way that's not presented in this book? This is where custom collections come in. Ding. Okay, the phone rang, because always when I'm filming, I was just getting into this. So where was I? I read what Ryder Carroll had to say about collections, and I like the idea that in here he wrote custom collections, customizable collections, because it's whatever fits your need. So in my mind, like I mentioned before, possibly because I've already lost track of where I was, I always considered a collection being a list. It wasn't until I read this book that I realized that obviously the monthly log and even your daily logs, those are all actionable lists, which we will get to that term when we talk about David Allen in a minute. But you certainly can have in a collection a list that's not going to do anything, not going to go anywhere. I always think of, what's her name? I think it's Corey from the Reset Girl. Lister's Got a List. I used to do those challenges. I'd try them. I'd start them a lot. I rarely ever completed any of them successfully, but I thought it was fun because it was just like another way to actually journal without having anything to say, because maybe you didn't know how to journal or you didn't have a lot to journal about. It was also a way to do memory keeping. So for instance, as a writer and someone who might want to document that time in my life, I could write a book about what it's like to be a freshman. One of the first things I would do is probably make a collection of all of the things that happened your freshman year and all of the feelings that I can remember from my freshman year. When you do something like that as a writer, it's very easy to date your book by putting in things like, for instance, I went to high school in the mid to late 90s. I think when I was a freshman, it was like freshman, sophomore year, maybe freshman year. That was like the first year we got brand new Gateway computers. That was like the first time they were making computers that were really meant for everyone's household, that were a little bit more affordable. It wasn't until later when people were like, dude, I'm getting a Dell. That was definitely more affordable. But those were like the first time I was like in school not using a floppy disk. You know what I mean? For the first time. that was different. So those things, if you wanted to talk about that time period and what it was like to live in that time period, you certainly could. Writers tend to stray away from that unless they are trying to tell about that actual time period. I might focus more on things that are still the same today, right? Even though what people wear and the phrases people use have changed, teenage angst never changes. It's usually about a combination of things. And so back freshman year, it's the pressure that you're getting from school, right? From coaches, from parents, trying to fit in. A lot of times when you get to junior high, and if you didn't do anything in junior high school, you are categorized based on performance. So if you went out for like basketball, you're immediately divided from your friends who you always thought of as your peers, your equals, right? You might end up on a C team, or they might be sitting varsity, and you're like, how the hell did this happen? We've been at the same places and done the same things. You start to see the differences and in levels for people, and that is really hard. I remember as a freshman just thinking everyone just knew stuff I didn't, and it's like, where have I been this whole time? How do you guys know all of this? Who is telling you these things? So collections for me come in very handy as a writer, and I still think of collections more like just kind of a list, whereas Ryder Carroll is saying it has evolved since then, and there certainly can be actionable if you'd like them to be. And I never even realized until later on bullet journaling that the index, future log, monthly log, and daily log were considered collections. I always assumed that collections were what were housed in the back of the notebook, because you wanted to keep them all in the same place. So anything like in the back of this book was a collection, whereas your monthly and index and everything is in the front. Do you see how that can be confusing for some people? And maybe you're out there saying, yeah, totally. But here he says, no, that these are definitely collections. So we have to rethink how, or at least I do have to rethink, the sun's going down, so the lighting might change. Or it's not going down, rather, it's going behind a cloud. Should I move this? Nope, that's still too bright. Anyway, so at some point I had to rethink how I'm looking at collections and what Ryder Carroll taking all of this in. And in this context, collections is a phrase that's used because that's what you're doing. You're collecting all of this data, this information, and it's going to go on a title like your monthly log, right? Your monthly log is just one big collection of all the things that you want to do in that month. Your daily log is a collection of all the things you want to do for the day. Future log, same thing. Everything that you want to do probably within 3 months, like a quarter, or even the year, depending on how long you are using your future log for. And your index is just a collection of everything that is in your entire notebook, and it is used as a device to help you find things a little quicker, especially if you're no longer in that notebook and you're coming back to it a year later to look for something. You're really grateful that you've put in the time into your index. So that to me is very interesting. I'm glad I sat down and looked that up and had that conversation with myself because for the longest time I was like, well, a collection doesn't have to be actionable. I still think that is true. Again, you can customize it to be actionable if you want to, according to Ryder Carroll. In David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, we have to remember that David Allen comes from the corporate world. He's a businessman and he's writing this book for corporate people. And planner people, they're taking what they like and leaving what they don't. They're trying to incorporate all the things that David Allen is saying in this book and applying it to their own lives. And especially like for someone like me who's not in the corporate world, sometimes that's hard. David Allen, I laugh out loud sometimes at him because, again, this is written for the corporate world. He's a corporate guy. I'm not a corporate woman, and I'm trying to apply some of the things he says, like delegate. And he's like, yeah, just delegate some things to your secretary. And I'm like, I am my secretary, David Allen. I'm my secretary. So it's just kind of funny in that way. Of course, if you are a wife, you could think not of your husband as your secretary, but somebody else that you can delegate things to. Your children also, depending on their age, they might be able to do some chores so that it can free you up to do other things like make dinner, right? And something that benefits the whole family, and they can have something that's just very easy and simple, one less thing for you to do. It's just kind of trying to change the things that he says and who they're for and applying them to your own life and situation. So David Allen has kind of coined this phrase of next action or actionable. I think that's the word he uses in the back here. Let's see if we can find the definition of what he says actionable or actionless are. Actionable. Okay. Describes something on which one intends to take action. So right off the bat, the difference between a collection and a next actions list, to me, a collection can still be something that doesn't need to be actionable. It doesn't need to have a next action. It can just be a list after the fact. Like I mentioned, my top 12 songs or top 10 songs from the 70s. I'm not going to do anything with that. I just want to know what they are. It's just something I want to do. It's a journaling technique. It's a memory keeping thing. And I also can put it in my collections. You could certainly put it with your regular journaling, but I tend to, put it in the collections because it might be something I want to refer to one day. If somebody ever asks me, or I just want to look over it. And you can make that spread pretty if you want, or you just want to be a lister. Whereas with David Allen, he's not really a to-do list kind of a person. He really wants to break things down into smaller pieces to make things more actionable so that you're not just writing a list. Like, for instance, at the beginning of the year as a writer, you might write down, I want to write a book in 2021. What the hell is that going to do for anyone? I used to do that all of the time, and now I know your girl has to have a plan. You have to have a plan, or it's just going to kind of sit there. It's like, when do you mark off the fact that you've written a book? I've been writing some books for years, and not every single day. Sometimes I take big chunks off. Like right now, I have probably 4 or 5 books that I have to finish up, but I'm writing another one. So I've been taking a break while I'm writing Project Violet. And as you all know, if you've been following, I hurt my wrist. So I was taking a break and letting my wrist heal before I started typing anymore. So the reality for me is, it is better to take something like writing a book and make it a next actions list and break it down further, because I need to chip away at this big block. And in order to do that, the best way I can do it is to make a huge list and slowly chip away at it. There are a lot of steps to writing a book, and I like being able to check things off. So this page probably best describes the things that go into making an actions list. Now, remember that we're going to be hearing from a man who's in the corporate world. So a projects list, project support material, calendar, actions and information, next actions list, a waiting for list, a reference material, and then a someday maybe list. So this is really great because you can talk about, a book and all of the things that you need in order to write it. And then the best thing about David Allen's system is that you should absolutely schedule these things. So instead of just saying, I'm going to write a book, in a next actions list, you would sit down and probably write out a strategy of time when you're going to write that book, maybe first thing in the morning. Also, you're going to sit down and you're going to break it down and say, okay, I'm going to write chapter 1 within the first 3 days. And then you're going to put that on your calendar. Whereas in the bullet journal system, it doesn't really break down collections in that way, right? It's saying, sure, you can make it an actionable list, but it doesn't give you a map. Like this one literally gives you a workflow diagram on how to do that, which is why whenever I'm working on a project, something that has more of an action type list feel, I go with a David Allen's action list, whereas my collection stuff tends to be more for journaling, memory keeping, listing. We also have a waiting for list. So when you make a waiting on list, that definitely comes into play even when you're writing a book, because maybe you're waiting for a critique partner to give you some feedback, or an alpha or beta reader at some point. And once you get that information, then you might make some changes based on their notes. After that, you have reference material. Again, if you are writing a book, depending on what genre, you might have certain books you want to read for that. Crafting books. You also might have like a time period that you're choosing that you need to pull some information from. A someday maybe list. Maybe after this book is over, you want to turn it into a series. Right now it has to be a standalone because a lot of times it's really hard to sell a series. So you try to write every book as a standalone, but you might have a someday maybe list of different things that you can do if they say, we really want more on these characters and on this subject. Of course, here with the flow chart, we have stuff, and then it breaks it down and it helps you decide whether things are actionable or not. So this is a good way to decide whether you actually have a collection or a next actions list, in my opinion. But I think that it's pretty straightforward. In case not, I have created both in the back of mine that we can go over and see the difference. So at some point at the beginning, I decided to go ahead and make what a lot of people do, which is a like daily routine. I took this little vellum that I printed on, and I made this in Canva just quickly because I thought I want to try this out. And I used these clear color dots to mark different colors here. And then off to the side, I made myself my own key. And of course, this navy color is what time I should be sleeping. Now, this key for me personally varies because sometimes I go to bed late. That means that I'm going to wake up late. If I go to bed early, that means I'm going to go to bed early. So it fluctuates for sure. I also wanted to add in some meal planning. I wanted to have a window for when I'm eating because I was trying out some intermittent fasting. I also wanted to break down how many times a day I was going to be eating, which in my mind was 2 because I was going to be fasting for breakfast. And of course, that's something that does go with not only intermittent fasting, but with eating keto. So if you know more about that, you understand, especially since we're in winter right now. I'm reading a lot. I'm not moving as much because it is winter. We can't go outside. Can't go to the gym because of coronavirus, in case you're watching this in the future. So there's just not enough of a need for me to have 3 meals a day sometimes. So I tend to have like my bigger meal when Jay's home because we eat together. So this was sort of something I had crafted that was never meant to have a next action. It didn't need to be broken down further. I either was going to use these sticky notes or not. It was something I could refer to when I'm like, what did I say I wanted to do it? If I had a schedule, how well have I stuck to it? I could always refer to this. Over here on this side, this was something that I just started working on the other day because I noticed that all of my music and playlists were so old and I was just so tired of the music I had. And over time, I had just kind of thrown together playlists based on, I don't know, here's a song that it seems like it's a slow one. Let's put it in the slow category. But I wanted to get a little bit more defined on things. So the first thing I decided I needed was down here, I wrote down general. And this is just where I'm going to put any songs that I hear in the car, like on the radio, whether I'm in my sister's car or my car, on TV or in movies. You know, sometimes you hear a song and you're like, oh, I love that song, or I've never heard of that song. It sounds nice. I'm going to look it up. So I put those songs in the list I call general so that later on I can figure out what category or what playlist I want to put them in. I have one for driving. I have one for Jade. Lately, we've been listening to ballads because we're crazy and out of control. Leave me alone, I'm filming. And sometimes we like to listen to ballads because we're hilarious, and she'll sing like one part and I'll sing the other. It depends on how well we know the song, which part we take. And then, of course, Forgotten. So sometimes, I don't know, the other day my sister and I were in the kitchen. Something was happening. I think there was like a commercial that came on. And there was an old song that we had both heard, and I can't for the life of me right now think of what it is. And I thought, oh my God, I forgot that song even existed. So songs that I actually like that I forgot are going to go into the forgotten list. Then we have creative moments, no words. So sometimes I like to, journal or collage without any words, because sometimes I've talked about this as a writer. If I'm listening to words, it can sometimes affect what I'm writing because I start thinking about that. So I like to listen to jazz. Sometimes I listen to this on YouTube because they have a lot of really cool channels for that. A study break for me tends to be like a walk in between writing or reading or anything like that. I just need to stretch my back, and I need something that's not really... I like to have the words, but I don't like to listen to new songs that I really like to sing along with, because most of the time I use my walk to process what I was just working on or thinking about. Happy hour is more like party music, more like, I guess, fast-paced dance music, maybe even some rap music there. Good morning, it says unoffensive music, and dream. So sometimes I wake up and there's just a song in my head for some reason, and I don't know why. I'm like, was I dreaming about that? So that's where I put those songs. Also, like non-offensive or unoffensive is unoffensive. I should have put non-offensive. Anyway, those songs to me aren't, oh my gosh, people are beeping me. Okay, anyway, this does not mean to me that it doesn't have cuss words or anything like that. To me, it just means early in the morning, I'm not going to listen to somebody like belting out high-pitched, screaming whatever kind of songs. That's just not going to happen early in the morning. So I need something that's going to help wake me up slowly, something that's going to help motivate me for the day, and that's what I mean by that. And then Summer 21, at some point, I usually make a summer list. Those songs tend to bring me back to that time. Then Diva, because who doesn't love a nice diva song like a Celine Dion song, a moment like in Bridget Jones's Diary where she's belting out the top of her lungs, crying and eating ice cream. You gotta love that sometimes. And then water weight, yeah, I'm chubby. It could be water weight, you don't know. And then lyrics, because I'm a writer, I listen to the words more than I do the actual the beat. Whereas Jay, who likes to produce music, he'll listen to the beat before he listens to the words. So I like beautiful language, poetic kind of music goes in that list. And then just chill for me is usually music that I already know that are like my favorites, kind of like the books that you put on your shelf that are your favorites you always go to when you want to get that certain feeling. That to me is the chill. So that, yes, I'm going to make this playlist for 2021. And then up here, I kind of separated these things here that are actionable. These are things that I can make slowly. I can also add to my 15-minute category for my week, where I just sit down and I go through and I make one of these or several, depending if I already know kind of what I want there. And these ones are not actionable. So delete screenshots, which yes, they're actionable, but what I mean is I don't have to mark them off. These are just things that are like triggers that I should be doing every time I'm at iPhone. And that is a David Allen thing where they say, okay, right, when I'm at my phone, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. When I'm at the computer, when I'm at the library. Those types of lists. So this is the difference between an actions or next actions list, an actionable list, and a collection for me. But as Ryder Carroll has mentioned, you can certainly make your collections actionable. I just don't think they always have to be. Whereas as far as David Allen is concerned, your list should always have a next actions, or what is the point? So what do you guys think about collections versus next actions list. Do you have anything to add to it? Let us know down in the comments below. All right, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.